Mega Man Zero, the unsung hero of the Game Boy Advance. This is a title that, in my eyes, deserves to stand shoulder to shoulder with the great of the action platformer genre, and although the game has certainly seen further critical re-evaluation alongside the rest of the Zero series when it was released in the recent Legacy collection, I personally feel that the game should be recognised as one of the finest action platformers ever committed to cartridge. Mega Man Zero is a game of impossible balancing acts being pulled off with confidence and ease. It manages the tension between story and gameplay masterfully without sacrificing one for the other. It manages to balance a strong sense of difficulty and challenges with the abilities of all players. It manages to resurrect the fan favourite characteristics of the X series while carving an identity that is distinct. This isn't my favourite game in the series. Hopefully we'll get to that in time. But, for now, I'd like to welcome you to the revolution. This is Mega Man Zero. As I stated previously, the Zero games are a direct mechanical and thematic continuation of the ideas found in the Mega Man X series, and those basic tenets can still be found in this entry. This is still a fast-paced, high-intensity action platformer with a strong focus on combat. But Mega Man Zero makes its first stake at independence from its parent franchise with a playable character of Zero. Although the character was introduced in Mega Man X and finally became playable for the first time in Mega Man X4, this game, for me, is the first to really understand how a character with the capabilities and talents of Zero should operate in gameplay. Zero as a playable character is a masterclass in design. There is a subtle fluidity in his motion that makes him endlessly satisfying to maneuver and control. His attacks, in particular, are imbued with a strong sense of weight and immediacy that allows the player to really connect with the character. And although this typically results in careful, considered play at the beginning of the game, the player cautious, not entirely sure how to handle Zero, through practice this builds a confidence and a sense of skill that allows the game to be immensely satisfying like almost nothing else out there. And certainly this game will test the player on their mastery of Zero's motions and attacks. The X series provides its own fair challenge, one that should not be underestimated, but Mega Man Zero is easily the most challenging game in the series released thus far. A great deal of players would have you believe that the game is unfair or poorly designed in this respect, and honestly I couldn't disagree more. Other than the tedium of needing to upgrade Zero's abilities at the game's start from the most basic capabilities, the game gives you all the tools you, as the player, really need to survive, and then eventually thrive. And the universe of Mega Man Zero is distinctly harsh and unforgiving. You're going to need to take every advantage you can get here. I'd like to spend a little bit of time dissecting the game's introduction, because it faced a fair amount of criticism on this site especially for being apparently tedious and unfair. I'd like to put forward a different view, however. I actually think this is the best introduction of any of the Zero games. Although I'd be lying if I said any Zero game other than 3 was my favourite, I do feel as if that game lets you loose with too many of its abilities from the start. You have access to an incredibly powerful saber and blaster in the opening stage, and then immediately receive the shield boomerang and recoil rod afterwards, fully upgraded. As such, offensively, Zero sees very little progression or development in his combat capabilities, and if you're not earning high enough rankings in the stages afterwards, which is going to be very unlikely on an initial playthrough, Zero is going to be using the same attacks from the game's start to its finish. Certainly, it offers the best replayability of any game in the series, but I feel like Mega Man Zero handles the progression of difficulty just that little bit better. Zero, having been awakened from a centuries-long period of hibernation, has lost the ability to utilise the same skills he once did, and must learn once again how to handle himself correctly in combat. And absolutely, the player is crippled at the game's start, but every upgrade Zero attains thereafter feels earned, the result of determination and perseverance, a perfect reflection of the harsh environment Zero inhabits and the spirit of the revolution he has become aligned with. What doesn't help the perception of the game feeling unfair, however, is the game's first real boss, Aztec Falcon, who is likely an insurmountable hurdle for new players and will probably send them back to grind Zero's abilities to a point where they are doing massive levels of damage. And this is certainly not the wrong way to play by any means. If the game gives you an option, the player should always feel as if they can take it. But I don't believe that this is meant to feel like an easy challenge. Zero has, after all, been resurrected, reborn into a world standing on the brink of destruction. Having him have to earn each victory he takes through struggle and hardship feels appropriate thematically, and this then results in an immensely satisfying experience for the player who perseveres through the game. Aztec Falcon is incredibly fast, moves unpredictably and erratically, seemingly without rhyme or rhythm, but fighting him repeatedly, learning how to weave through and under his attacks, switching between your weapons on the fly and examining the best times to strike, allows you to get the best out of Mega Man Zero, and it's in these intense, heart-racing moments of exquisite tension and pace that the game truly becomes something special. And the game is filled with moments like this, pushing your combat and platforming skills to the very limit. Admittedly, I have to point out here that the Legacy Collection has made this process a great deal more palatable, with a system that replaces the traditional lives with periodic checkpoints. And personally, this is the way I would recommend you play the game, and especially so if you're new to the series. The only drawback is that a number of the collectibles focusing around extra lives are made irrelevant, but Mega Man Zero largely does not concern itself with a great deal of exploration, so this isn't a massive loss. The system is the perfect way to ensure that the game's challenge remains intact, without the tedium of needing to replay levels over and over, especially if a particular one is giving you difficulty. And the game's unique challenge and difficulty is reflected within its world and the way in which the game contextualizes its action platformer stages. You are Zero, the soldier of legend resurrected to form the final hope of a dying revolution. Your hub world, your place of safety and reprieve, your home away from home, is a scarred and crumbling military base buried deep below the surface of the earth, populated by soldiers driven solely forward by their belief in you. Each mission, then, is presented to the player as a military operation, and you'll be doing everything from stealth missions to guerrilla warfare. And I've always appreciated the lengths that Mega Man Zero went to in order to make each level the player completes feel consequential and important. When a mission is complete, the player hasn't just ticked one of the many boxes that are required for the game to be finished, but they instead struck a divisive blow against the enemy, cut through their forces and weakened their resolve. And to emphasize this, each mission, in keeping with the traditions of the original Mega Man series, concludes with a boss fight. And the number of 8 Mavericks in the original and X series seems fairly arbitrary, the traditional number required before the game lets you challenge the boss. And don't get me wrong, Mega Man Zero is similar in this regard, but the delicate interplay between the game's world and gameplay enables each boss that is felled by the player to feel essential to the progression of the game, the execution of a tough enemy commander that will disrupt their movements going forward. And I think that it's this really unique sense of identity and style that fuels the gameplay of Mega Man Zero that enables it to feel distinct and rather special, even when compared to other games in the series. This is the most dire the virtues of a revolution ever feel in the Mega Man Zero franchise, and although this identity is maintained all the way through to Zero 4, Zero's development of greater combat abilities and the subsequent progression of the Revolution ensures that the oppressive, cruel nature of the universe Zero inhabits in the series never quite feels so raw and well realised as it does in this entry. Furthermore, there seems to be a special sort of quiet that occupies the space in between missions. The base is sparsely populated and lonely, cold and distant, but it creates a subtle contrast between the fierce rush that the action stages provide that is rather welcome, and was never really recaptured in the following games as the Revolution gained steam and the base became more busy. And that, I suppose, is why I keep coming back to this game, because even in its own series, it feels like very little else out there, and I think that's the way it should be. There's a special quality here that was never fully replicated or recaptured, and each game in the series has its own unique characteristics that ensure they seem distinct from one another. And as I've said, this isn't my favourite game in the series, but it is one I wholeheartedly recommend. And who knows, with time, it could well turn into a new favourite. Hello, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this foray into one of my very favourite game series. I really hope I can do more. In particular, I would love to talk about Zero 3. I feel as if I have quite a lot to say about it. So if you'd like to see that, please let me know. This is just a smaller project in between 2 bigger videos I have planned. I'm really excited about those and aim to have them out as soon as possible. And if you did enjoy this, please leave a like or subscribe if you could. I would really appreciate it. And if you didn't enjoy for any reason, I'd really like to know why. I'm always willing to engage with anyone and everyone to improve my videos and do the best that I can. So, thank you, goodbye, and I hope to see you in the next one.